Recognise him? It's King John. Recognise him? It's one of the barons. The town is Egham, which is next door to Runnymede, hence John and a baron. Our postcard today is Egham in Surrey. You know what amazes me, Richard, is that there's lots of towns that have grown up along the Thames. Staines, Sunbury, Richmond, Kingston, and yet Egham isn't.
No, I think in early times it would have been very foolish to build Egham near the Thames because Runnymede, don't forget, is a floodplain, and you would never have built on a floodplain in early times. Nowadays probably we could get away with it, but as Egham was developing, it was very difficult to actually have a building programme so close to the Thames.
What about the Hythe?
The Hythe, yes, well that's as a slightly elevated section, of course, and we have boats being tied on and pulled off at the Hythe, and it was a dropping off stage, of course, at Staines Bridge. So yes, that was the closest that any building really came to the river in this area, I would suggest.
So that's where boats would have come and then sent stuff into Egham itself?
I think so, yes.
So
yes.
this road here then, which is very, very busy now,
it's terrible, isn't it?
Would have been just as important. There's three very loud Egham girls in there who are waving. They must recognise. Do you recognise Richard? she just said to you, "Hi, Mum."
I know.
You don't look old enough to be her mother. You really don't. But it is very busy here. So
it is.
Does this road, as we've said, Runnymede is there, Windsor Castle, Staines, was this always a very well-used road?
A very busy route in early times, and one of the reasons they wanted to keep it open, because it was a busy route, they built the causeway. In other words, this elevated section. The piece that when you drive along between Staines and Egham, there is an elevated pathway, and that was built in the 13th century as a possibility of trying to keep the floodwaters, which would come up more or less every winter time, to keep the floodwaters away from Egham. And that would have kept the roads open, and it would have saved merchants going all the way around via Chertsey on their way to the west and down that way. So it was a man-made construction in the 13th century in order to keep this part of the world as dry as possible.
And it's still called the Causeway.
It's still called the Causeway.
And it's still here. And it's the entrance and the exit is just over there,
just
isn't it?
here underneath the M25 bridge, that's right.
Is Egham Doomsday?
Yes, it's mentioned in the Doomsday Survey, yes.
So why is it church so modern?
The modern. This church dates from 1820. There was a church on this site, which we think was built around about 1100s. But this church dates from 1820 when it first opened, and I think probably because the original church, when you look at drawings of it, had been added to on all four sides and they couldn't really expand it anymore, and with Egham becoming an expanding town in the early 19th century, it was quite necessary to build a new church, so we have the new St John the Baptist Church here.
But this doesn't match with this new church.
That's quite right. This Lichgate, in fact, was the porch to the original church, the 11th or 12th century church. And in fact, this has only been put here in Egham, back here in Egham, since just before the Second War in 1938. They found it in a garden of a house in Virginia Water.
You're joking, this?
No, exactly right.
Really?
Yes. So it's been restored to almost its original place.
Well, I'm glad the people at Virginia Water gave it back.
Yes, it's a good bit of fortune, wasn't it?
And there's a plaque here, which I can see, which says John Wesley, Parson Preached.
John Wesley passed through in 1744, that's right, and he wasn't terribly impressed with the vicar at that time, although we're not quite sure which of the vicar it was because they changed vicars at that year, so we're not really sure which of the vicars he referred to, but he wasn't terribly impressed with his sermons, apparently.
Oh, what did he say? Long and boring?
I think something along those lines, yes.
We don't want long and boring sermons. At that point, we better move.
Okay.
Now, what's this tomb here that you brought me to?
This is a very interesting tomb, Russell, because it's where a Frenchman called Frederick Corneille is laid to rest, and he was the misfortunate loser of the last fatal duel fought in England. Now, the story goes that a number of Frenchmen arrived at Englefield Green, which is just 2 miles to the west of here, really to settle old scores. And it transpired that they found this field, which is still called the duelling field, at Englefield Green, and the year was 1852. And the story goes that they were ready to... Corneille won the toss and chose to fire first, but unfortunately his gun misfired, and the upshot of it was his opponent lent him his gun, And when he took the first aim at Barthélemy missed his target. The second shot, he hit Cornet, and Cornet was mortally wounded and carried bleeding to the Barley Mow public house in Englefield Green, where he died some 6 hours later. Now, because there was not a church, there's not a church or churchyard in Englefield Green at that time, they had to bury him here in Egham, which is why we have Cornet's tomb here in Egham churchyard and not at Englefield Green.
So Englefield Green was part of the parish of Egham, is it still?
No, not since 1930. The parish boundaries were remarked in 1930.
But at that time it was the mother church.
It was a mother
for
church
Englefield Green, and so that's why we've got the last fatally wounded duellist in the land.
Yes. As I like to call it, the most recent, because you don't know, there might be another one.
Yeah, they might be doing it all over the place and we've not been told. Do we know what they were fighting over?
We don't. We think it was over money. Most usually that was the case, but we're not really sure.
Did Egham have a heyday, or was Runnymede its heyday?
I think the heyday of Egham, away from Runnymede, probably was its coaching days in the late 17th, 18th, 19th centuries. We had a number of coaching inns here in the town, and of course Runnymede being so close was a wonderful place to get the hay for the horses. And also Egham was very fortunate because we were a very nice, safe 20-mile distance from London, so it was a good staging post. It was a place where horses could be changed, passengers could be fed and watered, and it was just a very convenient place. So Egham did begin to grow, I think, in those years between, say, 1690 up to the mid-19th century.
What about now? Is it suburbia?
Very much so, I think. It's lost a lot of its shops, although we're very fortunate. We still have one or two family-run shops and businesses in the town. But we have a lot of competition from just outside, from big stores and big supermarkets, which is a story in very many places now. It's not peculiar to Egham, it's just one of those things that's happening in modern life, I think.
King John is here, one of the barons is here. Should he really be here? Should he actually be on on Runnymede? He's in Egham.
He's in Egham.
Yeah.
This is about the nearest place that we can really put a monument, I think, to King John. If it was down on Runnymede, it would probably be more appropriate. But this is to remind people when they visit Egham that if they go just across the road here onto the meadow of Runnymede, they can go to a historic site where Magna Carta was sealed all those years ago. And this, I think, is a reminder that King John had associations with Egham.
My guide Richard Williams should know all about Egham and Runnymede, as he wrote a book on their pictorial history. Now he's asked if he can show us the local Egham Museum via the Runnymede Arcade. Lovely. Why did the Queen Mother come here to your museum?
Why did she come here? She came here to just pay us a visit, basically, in 1980.
Oh, nothing to do with the horse racing, because we know she likes horses.
Well, that's right.
I didn't know you had Egham races here at one time, Richard.
Yes, Egham races started on Runnymede in 1734. And with a break in the late 18th century, ran right through to 1884 when they closed. We think they probably had to close because of vandalism. Nothing changes, does it?
No, it doesn't.
It had to close because they couldn't afford to pay the police force to supervise it any longer. What was happening was a lot of visitors coming in probably from London and further around to the Egham races, and they were coming down by the train which opened. The station in Egham opened in 1856. So from 1856 onwards, there was a great number of people coming into the town which hadn't come before, and Egham races unfortunately suffered because of that.
Right. Before I go, what's the origins of the name Egham?
Egham, we think, we're not absolutely sure, but we think it stands for Egger's ham. Egger was an early Saxon landowner, perhaps. We don't think he was necessarily any much more important than that. But Egger's ham would have been Egger's settlement, ham being another word for settlement. So Egger ham became Egham over the years.